of registered voters turned out and voting in several locations has been suspended. The Constitution says all constituencies have to vote. Surely that alone makes this election illegitimate.
The legitimacy of any election is provided for and anchored in the Constitution. It is determined by constitutional provision, and it is also determined by the people of Kenya. On all constitutional fronts, whether you're talking about 50%, as is required by the Constitution, of voters who voted in the election, you must win 50%. We have already surpassed that threshold. 25% in 24 counties. We already have 44 actually counties where we have 25%. That means, in terms of the Constitution, the legitimacy question is already answered. Secondly, on matters to do with turnout, it is incorrect for Mr. Odinga to say 3.5 million voters turned out. In fact, 7.5 million voters turned out, and that information is available to the general public. In fact, CNN can Google the IEBC portal, and they will find that what Mr. Odinga is saying is incorrect. Of course, he wants to peddle a narrative that suits his political narrative. But the reality is that 91% of Kenyans who voted for Uhuru Kenyatta on the 8th of August turned up again and voted for us on the 26th, on Thursday.
But the chairman of the electoral board, the IEBC, said just over 6.5 million people voted. Where does the 7 million come from? That doesn't add up.
The chairman spoke. That is about 1.5 days ago, and he said that was the estimate. As it is now, the chairman is at the National Tallying Center, and he is presiding over this exercise, where the tally is now at close to 7.5 million. So in reality, all constitutional thresholds have been reached. And for the record, repeat elections worldwide have a characteristic of low turnout. Repeat elections that have candidates boycotting, like the one in Kenya, and not just boycotting, candidates sponsoring violence, intimidation, and blackmail on voters, attracts low turnout. The strange thing in Kenya is that the turnout is at almost 40%, which is a record.
We've got the figures at 33%, which is pretty low. A majority of registered voters didn't vote. Is the opposition right when he says that this shows that this is a vote of no confidence in the government and the electoral process?
For the record, 90% of polling stations opened in Kenya. 91%, 7.5 million Kenyans woke up early and went to vote. It was the intention of our competitors and the opposition that no Kenyan shows up to vote. To their dismay, 7.5 million Kenyans have rejected their boycott story and turned up and voted. And in fact, the people of Kenya have stood by the constitutional provision and exercised their legitimate, constitutional, and democratic mandate and voted in a government. And shortly, we will be having a declaration and finally a swearing in as far as or in accordance with the Constitution of Kenya. So the opposition narrative was lost and defeated because it failed.
Mr. Ruto, there are huge concerns about the numbers that you're throwing about. More than 7 million people, you say, voted for your party. We still have, I just heard from my producer, the word is that it's still 6.5 million people voted in this election. 70%, about 70% of the population of registered voters did not vote. What do you make of the figures? Do you think it's better to wait for a final paper count?
In fact, the figures you have are as of yesterday. The figures we have as of now is 7.5 million.
Should there be a final paper count vote?
There will be a final paper tally, maybe latest by tomorrow or tomorrow afternoon. And when we get there, the figures will speak for themselves. It is true, 9% of Kenya were denied the opportunity to vote. And they were denied the opportunity to vote because of violence sponsored by our competitor in his region, where citizens were denied the chance to vote by organized militia that ensured that election officials and election materials never made their way to polling stations.
Mr.
And then
Ruto,
they want to allege that the people of that region did not want to vote. If it is true that the people of that region did not want to vote, let them remove the militia. Let them allow ballot papers and ballot boxes and election officials into polling stations, and let us see whether Kenyans in that region will vote or not. But to organize violence against innocent, ordinary citizens and pretend that they have refused to vote is the worst kind of injustice that can ever be.
Mr. Ruto, we'll have to leave it there for now. Certainly many more questions I have, but we'll have to leave it there for now. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.